Hello again. This is Ingrid. Thank you again for joining in and coming back. The proof is in the pudding. If you didn't come back to join me, I would know that I wasn't doing something right. But hopefully, I'm trying to get this right. And the fact that you're back helps me to keep going. So thank you for coming back. Last time we talked about expectations, and I said we would go a step further and talk about boundaries. But today I'm going to flip the script a little bit, and instead of talking about boundaries, I'm going to talk about complaining because before you can even get to the place of expectations or setting the right expectation or creating the right boundary or putting the boundary in place that is required for that particular issue, person, or thing, you need to understand why you're complaining or the what about why you're complaining. So, complaining, I mean, how many of us complain? I do. Am I a chronic complainer? I don't know. I used to be. I used to be a chronic complainer when I was much younger. I would complain to everybody. My cat, my daughter, my friends, anybody who would listen. My mother was the biggest person that I would complain to because she was the most patient. She would listen to me. I guess it's because I was her daughter or something. So I complain a lot to my mom. And since my mom's passing, I find myself complaining a lot to my daughter. So I'm sorry, daughter. Anyhow, we do complain. Complaining is a part of is a human go-to. We complain when we're unhappy or dissatisfied with something. We complain when things happen to us in the immediate and we don't know how to respond, or our immediate response is to complain. For those of you who don't complain, that's okay. That's a great place to be. If something happens to you and it knocks you off kilter and you're like just doing deep introspection and analysis of the situation, that is spectacular. Then don't listen to the rest of this video, or maybe you should, because ultimately, those of us who choose not to complain also develop frustration, or we become passive aggressive. Everybody's familiar with passive aggressive. What does it mean? Does it mean I can be passive and then aggressive? Actually, it would, it said that there's a lot of stuff in between the passive and the aggressive. In between all this space is the fact that you have allowed people to dump on you, and you've allowed people to treat you a certain way without any repercussions or without you speaking up and being direct. Most people who are passive aggressive tend to be indirect. I don't have that problem. I've always been very direct. There are moments, though, I am not perfect. Remember this, and I'm not going to be hypocritical. There are moments in my life when I have been passive aggressive, and is based on either the friendship that I have with a person or our understanding of that individual. So I approach it very passively and maybe with little or no aggression. But back to complaining. Why do we complain? We complain because it is something that we can let out our frustrations in. Complaining is really one of those tools that allows the frustration to get heard. It allows you to understand why you're frustrated. It helps you to understand why you're complaining. And a lot of times those complaints are legitimate. The problem with complaining is when we take it to another level. When it happened 2 years ago and you're still complaining about the issue 2 years later, that's the problem. Complaining shouldn't be extended. It's not an extended thing. We shouldn't be complaining to the day we die about the same issue. If you're complaining about an issue, that's realistic. It's very unrealistic if you complain about the same issue over and over again. To complain means to actually air your grievance. If you have a grievance with someone or something, or you don't know how to deal with an issue that has arisen between you in any form of relationship. It could be with your parents, your family, your siblings, your friends, your co-workers, and you don't know how to deal with it. It's a natural response to think it over or mull it over. A lot of us mull and think things over with other people. And that's a good thing because other people's perspectives, other people's ideas, or takes on the subject matter is important, because then it can help you to make a realistic summation. You can decide if after you've spoken to three of your best friends, well, if all three of them said, you know what, it is a jackass, we believe it is a jackass, then chances are it's a jackass, right? But it confirms or gives you validity in your summation of the whole incident. But complaining beyond the point of complaining is too much. When you're complaining and you can't find resolution, it's something deeper. Is it because the complaint or the issue that caused you to complain or to engage in complaining is an issue that is far deeper rooted than you can imagine? Maybe it's something in your childhood. Like, for example, when I was a child, my mom, I had two other siblings, and my middle sister, my mom favored her. She was her favorite. So I would complain about her, and my mom would say to me, "Hey, you know what? If she's right, she's right." I didn't really get any resolution from there. So I developed over a period of time, when I was in that same predicament in a future event or later on in my life, I would deal with it the same way. I would get disturbed. It would steal my joy, my peace. I would get aggravated. The disappointment became greater than it would normally. It was a wound that had never healed. It was an open wound that kept on being dug at. So that's when we start talking about triggers. So something in this current event triggered a response to me that made a complaint more long term than it should have been. I think if we learn how to use complaining, it's not that you shouldn't complain or that you can't complain. Eventually, what happens is if you understand and process what you're feeling internally and why you are complaining rather than taking action, then you'll understand yourself better and understand the whole aspect of not having to complain. At some point, we need to get to the point where we're not complaining. Is it naturally? Is something that could happen? Is this possible, Ingrid? Yeah, we can get to the place where we don't complain. I know some people who don't complain. I've met those people. And the reason they don't complain is because they can always see both sides of the argument. They're not that smart or they're not supremely intelligent. It's just that they're very objective. Objectivity allows you the ability not to complain. That's one aspect, objectivity. The second thing that can help you to stop from complaining is gratitude. Gratitude is being grateful regardless of what happens. Let me put a little disclaimer here. It should be going across the screen. If it's not, I'm just going to say it. I haven't mastered the art of not complaining yet. I don't complain on a daily basis, but I have not mastered the art of not complaining at all. Because there are moments when I find myself complaining. Maybe it has to do with my age. I don't know. But I find myself complaining when I know better, when I should do better. But that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother time. But if you practice gratitude, if you understand, you know what? This person may have had a really difficult time. Or, for example, you go to a store and the store clerk is really mean to you, and all you're trying to do is buy a tube of lipstick, and the store clerk has the worst attitude. And you come away from that experience and you find yourself, wow, she was horrible. She was so terrible. Some people may even go a step further and approach the manager to bring the issue to the manager's attention. But if we, in that moment, were living in gratitude, if we understood that what is happening to us or outside of us doesn't always have to do with ourselves, that's a big thing, isn't it? When you don't have to internalize the external, that's when complaining ceases. When you no longer have a reason to create chaos in your own life, when you don't even have a reason to say, you know what, this is something that I do and this is something I'm comfortable with, but instead choose to say, this is something I do and something that I have determined I'm not going to be comfortable with. I don't want to be a complainer. I would rather leave that kind of stress alone. So complaining is a choice. It really is. But a lot of people, they're culturally, there are cultures where people complaining becomes a thing because complaining then becomes storytelling. Is a narrative. Some of the greatest stories we have are about people's complaints or people's viewpoints on things that have unfolded in their own lives. So there's a value there. I mean, when you think about the cultural aspect, but on an individual basis, when it affects you as an individual, when it takes away your equilibrium, when it doesn't allow you to flow through your day, when you could be going like this all day long, and then all of a sudden somebody puts you in this mode where you're complaining, you go bump, and the speed bumps get like this. That's when complaining needs to end. How do we stop complaining? I mean, the gurus, the motivational gurus, and all the other people that are out there that are authorities on this subject, the psychologists, the psychoanalysts, they will tell you that complaining is really a stressor. It can really upset you and it can raise your tension level. And it can also make for a very disgruntled or miserable individual. So, how do we stop complaining? How can we actually stop the act of complaining? We mentioned choice, we mentioned objectivity, we mentioned gratitude. But the very most important thing that will help us stop complaining is action. Simple, simple action. Complaining is a adjective. Or no, in this case we should say verb, but some people would say it's an adjective. She was complaining. But the actual act itself is you doing it. So therefore it's a verb. When you find yourself complaining, it's because you are out of sync with yourself. It's not about the other person who's caused you to complain. It's not about what they did or what they didn't do. It's simply you. It's a note to self. Check yourself. You're complaining again. Why are you complaining? It happened. You realize why it happened. You were able to analyze from both sides. You were objective. You practiced the art of gratitude and you were like, you know what? I'm grateful because I still have my peace. I'm grateful because the person really didn't take anything from me. They didn't really rob my home. They didn't take my bed, my mattress. They took nothing from me. But what did they give you? That's the gratitude part. What are you getting from the experience? Instead of complaining, instead of saying, this is what it is, and this person, we can get crazy. I know people that can go from 0 to 100 with the complaining thing, and they can get crazy. And they will go around and keep this thing going until it becomes gossip, until it becomes an issue, and until it takes away some part of the fabric of their makeup. So, what's the bottom line? Action. What action should you perform when you're complaining? What action is needed? The action that is needed is to insert or to put all those things into play. Be objective. Be grateful in that moment. Stop the action. Why am I complaining? And what's the objective here of my complaining? Is it to make me feel better? Is it for me to just vent? Okay, then choose one person. You don't have to choose 10. Come on. After I once heard in the movie, they said, I think it was Games of Thrones. They said, if you tell one person, that's okay. When you tell 2 people, now it becomes an issue. So get to the point where you're not complaining. Think about who you are. Think about the person, the self that you're developing. Think about the person you're becoming. There's nothing that can be resolved without introspection and analysis, self-analysis and self-introspection. But when you refuse to look at yourself and you start looking at your external world and you think that your external world has to have an impact on you or that it does impact you, that's when you're not really in the realm of possibility or reality. The reality is that you're responsible for your actions. Doesn't matter what happens or what prompts that action. Ultimately, you're responsible for how you choose to respond or react to every situation and circumstance. I know it's not easy. I know that this world is such where people can be, they just can be. And I know that dealing with people is, if you didn't, somebody once said, if I didn't have to deal with people, my life would be better. This is true. But people are here also to teach us how to be better. So let's realize that complaining is a choice. Let's put those tools in place to help us to stop complaining. One of the things that helps with complaining is journaling. If you get home and you still are frustrated about the event that caused you to complain, write it down. Write it down in the book. Write down why, the editor's questions: where, what, who, and why. Why and how did you get here? Where did you get to the point where you felt like you had to vent and go on venting for days? At some point, you need to stop. Check yourself. More than 3 days, it means now it is something that is wounding your spirit. My name is Ingrid, and today I hope that you understand that taking measures and taking away the little word, not really that little word, but taking away one aspect of your behavior can alter your future and bring you to a place where you can self-actualize. Thank you and look forward to seeing you again. And remember, no complaining.